Good morning. Welcome to the Ordinary Council meeting of the 28th of July. It's 9:02. I'll call attendance in the room as myself, Councillor Kunzelman, Councillor Milligan, Councillor Fechner, Councillor Doyle, Councillor Tully, Councillor Johnick and Councillor Ireland. I understand that Councillor Madsen is on his way. We'll move on now to the acknowledgement of country. Councillor Kunzelman, would you like to lead us, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Ipswich City Council acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land on which we are gathered, acknowledging our gratitude that we share this land today, but also acknowledging the cost of that sharing and our hope that we can move to a place of justice and partnership together, and we welcome opportunities for further engagement.
Thank you, Councillor Kunzelman. And just note, Councillor Madsen, thank you. Move on to the opening prayer. Councillor Doyle, would you like to lead us into prayer?
Thank you, Mayor. Heavenly Father, we seek you to be with us in this meeting today. Assist us to be an example to others, bringing strength and encouragement in whatever we do, and equip us for the ongoing challenges as they arise. Give the guidance to continue to make wise decisions for both the short and long-term benefit of our city and our community, regardless however difficult and unpopular some will be. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle. We move on to apologies and leave of absence. And Councillor Ireland?
Yes, please, Mayor. I'm seeking permission to phone in or attend virtually the committee meeting on the 11th of August and the 15th of September 2022. The only committee I attend is the Growth and Infrastructure Committee, and I seek leave of absence for personal reasons for the Ordinary Council meeting on the 25th of August 2022.
Thank you. So there are three dates there. You wish to dial in, or
two dates.
The audio link on the 11th of August and the 15th of September?
Yes.
And the Ordinary Council meeting on the 25th of August?
I'm going to abstain. I won't be attending.
A leave of absence?
Yes.
Okay, so you're asking for to go dial in the audio link for the 11th of August and the 15th of September?
Yes.
And a leave of absence on the 25th of August.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just make sure that that's written up there. Thank you. Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? I'm happy to. Councillor Doyle. Any discussion? I'll vote those in favour. Please raise your hand.
Do I vote?
I don't know.
Okay.
Probably not, because it's about yourself. But thank you. I'll say it's unanimous in the room. If I get that clarified, CEO. Councillor, I probably can't. Yeah. So in that case, I'll do that again. My apologies. I'll just do that again. So I'll just check with the CEO. It's up to Councillor Ireland.
It's entirely up to Councillor Ireland. If she wishes to vote, she may, but given it's about her, it's always best not to.
Okay, so I'll just do that again. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's everyone in the room except for Councillor Ireland. Those against and those abstaining. Thank you. And Councillor Ireland has abstained. Thank you. We move on to item 5, which is condolences. And I understand, Councillor Fechner, you have a condolence motion?
Thanks, Mayor. I would like to move that Council express its condolences on behalf of the City of Ipswich to the family of the late Mr. Keith Arthur Pennell, who passed away in Ipswich on Sunday the 24th, 2022. Keith was born in Ipswich on the 18th of March, 1926. To parents who lived on Whitehill Road. As a young man in 1944, and with World War II raging at the country's doorstep, Keith volunteered to serve in the Australian Armed Forces. He turned 18 that year, the minimum age for enlistment. His birthday fell on the Saturday, and Keith enlisted on the following Monday. In uniform, initially with the 63rd Australian Infantry Battalion, Keith would serve our nation in active service and at home and abroad for almost 5 years. He spent over 3 of these years, some 1,228 days, in active service in the Pacific Theatre. He served in the Dutch East Indies, now part of Indonesia, and when the war ended in 1945, he immediately volunteered for the Australian contingent of the British Commonwealth Occupation Force deployed in Japan. As part of these forces, Keith was stationed in the Japanese port city of Kure. Kure, which itself had been devastated by wartime bombing raids, was just 25 kilometres from Hiroshima, the site of the world's first atomic bombing. Keith was a direct witness to the effects that bombing had on this city and their residents. It's difficult to imagine what he may have experienced and seen. Demobilised in 1949, he returned home to Australia and Ipswich. For 40 years, he worked on RAF Amberley Base until his retirement in the year of 1990. Over those years and for the remainder of his life, Keith was an unwavering champion for the health and well-being of his fellow service personnel and veterans. He was an executive member of the British Commonwealth Occupation Forces Association, the Nuclear Veterans Association, and the Incapacitated Servicemen and Servicewomen's Association of Australia, on which he served as president. As a long-time volunteer, pensions and welfare officer at the Incapacitated Servicemen and Servicewomen's Association, Keith worked tirelessly on behalf of former servicemen and servicewomen. Keith was keenly involved in the local RSL community and was made a life member of the Ipswich RSL sub-branch last year, just 2 days before his 95th birthday. For many of us, Keith was a beloved mainstay at local Anzac Day services. Including the Bundamba Honour Stone, where he recited the Anzac Ode for 40 years. In recent years, his arrival to the Bundamba Dawn service by Jeep was greatly anticipated by the enormous crowd who greeted him with applause before he took his place beside fellow World War II veteran Major Jean Bird. Of Anzac Day, he once said, "I think of my old mates. It's a bit of an emotional day for me, but it means a lot." By word and action, he helped others, particularly young people, to better understand and appreciate the solemn day and importance of honouring and remembering those who have suffered and sacrificed for our country and its people during times of conflict. Keith was the adored patron of the Bundamba Anzac Observance Committee and served on the Eastern Suburbs Anzac Day Commemoration Committee too. I know past and present members of these committees are deeply saddened by his passing. Keith's service and contribution to the community was also recognised by Council. In 2008, he was made Ipswich Citizen of the Year. In 2015, Council named a North Baval Park in his honour, and I acknowledge the advocacy of former Councillor Bruce Casos, a good friend of Keith's, and fellow Bundamba Observance Committee member who helped make this happen. Speaking personally, over the last couple of years, I formed a very meaningful relationship with Keith. I had the privilege to get to know him on Monday night meetings at the old hall down in Bundamba. I found him to be incredibly kind, humble and welcoming, and so generous with his time and advice for a young elected representative in this city. He was a remarkable man and so thoroughly honourable and decent. So, I On behalf of the city, I pass on our sincere condolences to Keith's daughter Estelle and the rest of his family. Keith made his mark on this city and its people, and this will not be forgotten. Vale Keith Pennell.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fichtner, for a very moving and honest condolence. We'll move that condolence motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous and carried. Thank you, Councillor Fichtner. Item 6, tributes. There are none. Item 7, presentation of petitions. There are none. 8, presentations, deputations. There are none. 9, public participations. There are none. Item 10 is matters of public interest. And I'll be moving a matter of public interest in relation to the Queensland Government response to calls for a health inquiry into the waste odour in the event in Ipswich be noted, and I'll read this out. I would like to provide our residents in council with an update on an item from our 19th of May ordinary council meeting. At that meeting we called for the Health Minister to, as a matter of priority, investigate the odour issues facing residents in and around Collingwood Park. Both the CEO and myself have written to the Health Department's Director General and Minister Darth respectively. I can now share their responses publicly with the community. Disappointingly, Minister Darth has declined our request to establish a panel of inquiry, and the Department of Health has declined to register an environmental health event. I'll table the correspondence from Minister Darth for the benefit of the community and for inclusion in the meeting minutes. This means affected residents in a range of suburbs in the vicinity of Collingwood Park and New Chum will still struggle for answers to their ongoing health concerns. Residents in these communities continue to suffer with ongoing health complaints. I note Cleanaway's efforts to remediate the site. However, this is a health issue that will take months, if not longer, to resolve. Residents want real answers and real action ahead of the coming summer, where there's a very real possibility that storms and rain will cause the same issues to occur again. Our community deserves to know what's going on around their homes and what long-term health impacts these odours will have on them and their families. It is time their calls were heard. Ipswich is tired of being the state's dumping ground, and I have to say I'm disappointed with the state government's approach on this matter. I want to say to the residents who are continuing to speak up, we hear you and will continue to support your push for better. I move that my MPI be noted. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Any discussion? I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour? It's unanimous and carried. We now move on to declarations of interest on the matters of the agenda. Are there any declarations of interest? Thank you, Councillor Fichtner.
In accordance with Section 150 EQ of the Local Government Act, I, Councillor Andrew Fichtner, inform the meeting that I have a declarable conflict of interest in the following item. Item 15.6, titled Ipswich Central Redevelopment Committee's Report. The nature of the interest are my business interests in both A1A Proprietary Limited and Bar Heisenberg Proprietary Limited, both located in the top of town in Ipswich. I plan on dealing with this matter by leaving the room while the matter is discussed and voted on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fichtner. Councillor Madsen.
In accordance with Section 150 EQ of the Local Government Act 2009, I, Councillor Jacob Madsen, inform the meeting that I have a declarable conflict of interest in item 15.6 titled Ipswich Central Redevelopment Committee Report. The nature of the declarable conflict of interest is I am on the executive of the Ipswich Trades Hall and Labor Day Committee, which owns the Ipswich Trades Hall, which is adjacent to that redevelopment work. As a result of my conflict of interest, I will leave the meeting room while the matter is considered and voted on.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Are there any other declarations of interest on matters before us today? No. Thank you very much, Councillor Fichtner and Madsen, for making those disclosures. We move on to the confirmation of minutes, and we've got a few minutes here to confirm. The first one is item 12.1, which is the confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 30th of June 2022. I'll move those. Do I have a seconder for those? Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Any discussion? I'll put the minutes to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Unanimous and carried. We now go to item 12.2, which is the confirmation of the minutes of the special meeting held on the 30th of June 2022. I'll move those. Do I have a seconder for those? Thank you, Councillor Kunzelman. Any discussion? I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous and carried. Then move on to item 12.3, which is the confirmation of the minutes of the special meeting held on the 7th of July 2022. I'll move these. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Any discussion? I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. It's unanimous and carried. Move on to item 12.4, which is the confirmation of minutes of the special meeting held on the 12th of July 2022. I'll move those. Do I have a seconder for those? Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Any discussion? No, I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. It's unanimous and carried. We'll now move on to item 12.5, which is the confirmation of the minutes of the special meeting on the 14th of July. I'll move those. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Milligan. Any discussion? I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous and carried. The next item is item 13, the mayoral minute. I gave notice of an intention for a mayoral minute at the council ordinary meeting on the 30th of June. As per my email to all the councillors on Sunday, the 24th of July, I move that this matter be laid on the table into the August ordinary council meeting. So that's, do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Kunzelman. Any discussion? I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you. It's unanimous and carried. I'll move on to item 14, which is the business outstanding, including conduct matters and matters lying on the table to be dealt with. I'll provide an update on the previous outstanding matters. There are two matters taken on notice at the council ordinary meeting on the 19th of May. The one was at I'm not sure, Sia, would you like to speak to these, or I'll just continue on?
Given that they're on the public agenda, Mayor, I wasn't intending to.
Okay. So the matters on notice was that briefing be provided to councillors on the program of action to repair council's sporting club asset damaged by the 2022 flooding and rain events, including advice on insurance of these assets in future. As you can see, a briefing note was provided to all councillors on the 31st of May, and a report item 16.11 was submitted to the council ordinary meeting on the 30th of June. Councillors were also briefed on flood insurance at a briefing session held on the 5th of July. The second matter that's on notice, that information be provided to councillors on the financial model due to be delivered to council by the Queensland Treasury Corp, relevant to decision making on the Nicholas Street precinct, together with a timeline on a briefing session for councillors. I note that a councillor briefing session was held on the 5th of July this year with Queensland Treasury Corp representatives, and a report will be presented to a future meeting of council. I'll now move on to matters lying on the table to be dealt with. There are two matters that are on the table. So I move that item 14.1, which is on transparency and integrity, be lifted from the table. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Jonick. All those in favour of lifting the matter off the table? It's unanimous. Thank you. It's your motion, Councillor Jonick. Would you like to move it and speak to it?
Thank you. I'll just move it with variations.
Have you provided that to the Secretariat? Thank you.
So the variations are that a report be prepared for a future meeting of council with recommendations for the inclusion of a reporting process that will ensure transparent sharing of information amongst councillors. It will outline options for a reporting process whereby, if a report is published on council systems in accordance with council procedures and is subsequently removed for editing, those amendments are outlined in a notification to all councillors, including the reasons for the amendments being made. Specifically, this proposal should aim to capture matters before council that have any risk management implications, and any interactions with identified reports would require appropriate tracking to strengthen councillors' consideration on matters in the public interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for this? Thank you, Councillor Doyle. As a seconder, do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Doyle? Oh, so did you wish to speak further? So, my apologies, Councillor Doyle. Would you like to speak
fine.
further?
I think the motion clearly states everything I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnnick.
Thank you, Mayor. We've had, I guess, some very challenging few weeks, and I'm happy that I guess we've now come to, potentially come to an agreement on what the additional reporting process may look like to ensure that each councillor has access to, the same information in a timely fashion. I want to say categorically I support the Office of Independence Assessor's finding that our mayor has not acted inappropriately. The word tampering has been used around social media, and it's troubling, and it's ultimately has been significantly damaging to our organisation, our staff here as elected leaders. We need to do better. We need to lead by example and understand that the consequences of our actions and our behaviours does have a ripple effect throughout the organisation, as well as the way our beautiful city is portrayed nationally. I would also like to go on the record to publicly condemn comments via social media and via personal messenger levelled at Councillor Johnnick in particular, labelling her a pro-sex offender. That is completely despicable. There is no other word other than despicable to level those sorts of accusations at a female. So I would like to put all of this behind us and go on the record publicly, CEO, that I stand by my decision as part of the panel that appointed you as our CEO for your strength and character and your integrity, and I look forward to working closely with everyone going forward. I do look forward to the outcomes of this report, and hopefully we can all get to a place where we are confident in the advice and reports that are being given to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this motion? No, I'd just like to thank the councillors for coming together yesterday to discuss this motion and the work of this council in working together on this variation. When I speak to this motion, I wish to be clear from the outset that I have full faith in the reports prepared by council staff and place on the record my concerns with the damage done to staff morale and our council standing within the community. I also want to, from the outset, place on the record that the Office of the Independent Assessor has dismissed complaints made about my conduct. There are now substantial and robust procedures in place in our council, like the Accept a Request guidelines, that specify who councillors can speak to and interact with. The fact remains that our community expects councillors to be involved in drafting policies and papers in partnership and consultation with independent senior officers. It makes sense that councils engage in respectful collaboration with officers. We are the conduit for our community into council decision making. Our community can also have faith in the work that all of our staff and all the work that our staff do, from our roads and open space crews to our planners, community development staff, facilities and event staff, and everyone in between, that you have our faith. To our dedicated staff, I want to say that I have full confidence in your professionalism and integrity. Councillor Johnny, as the mover, do you wish to say anything? I don't think anyone's spoken against it, but would you like to have a right of reply or move straight to the vote?
I'll just move to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there's no other discussion, I'll move the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous and carried. We now move on to item 14.2, and I move that this item be lifted from the table. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Fechner. I note, Deputy Mayor, that you were the one that put this matter before us.
Mayor, I think we need to lift it from the table first.
Oh, sorry, I did the first and second, my apologies. We did the moving and seconding. I'll put a vote, those to vote in favour to lift the matter from the table. It's unanimous and carried. Deputy Mayor.
Given the matter was already dealt with on the 12th of July, I'm more than happy to withdraw this motion.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for withdrawing that motion? Thank you, Councillor Jonick. Any discussion? I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you. It's unanimous and carried. We now move on to the reception and consideration of committee reports. The first is 15.1, the Growth, Infrastructure and Waste Committee. And I move that the Growth, Infrastructure and Waste Committee report number 6 of 2022 on the 14th of July be noted. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Tully. Any discussion? No, I'll put that matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. It's unanimous and carried. Move on to now item 15.2, which is the Governance and Transparency Committee. I'll hand over to the chair of that. I think, is it item 8? Do you wish to have dealt with separately? Or?
Yeah, there's some extra information for item 8, so I determined that it would be appropriate for it to be pulled out to highlight to councillors that it's now a substantively different matter, although quite similar still, but needs to be reread.
Thank you.
So yeah, I'll move that the recommendations are adopted with the exception of item 8.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Milligan. Any discussion on that? No, I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous and carried. Thank you. As we were dealing with number 8 later on, I'll just hold that over. Any, Deputy Mayor, is that how you'd like to have that dealt with? That's item number.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what, yeah. Yeah. Yes, so. Yeah, that's the intent. I was about to say, yes, that's that's 16.7, which is the disposal of parked council freehold land. We will deal with it at 16.7. Happy with that? Thank you very much. We now move on to item 15.3, which is the Community Culture, Arts and Sports Committee. And I'll hand over to the chair of that.
Thank you, Mayor. I did circulate an email earlier this week with regards to some feedback the committee had on the community guidelines here. So I guess if we're working procedurally here, we only had 2 items on the agenda. One was that the minutes be noted. I think we can uphold that recommendation and just talk about the community funding guidelines.
Okay. So you're moving that report with the exception of item 2?
Correct.
Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Kunzelman. Any discussion on that motion? No, I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous and carried. Let's move on to item 2 of that report.
Yeah, I just want to speak briefly to this and to bring it to all councillors' attention that There was some broad discussion at the committee a couple of weeks ago with regards to how we as elected representatives saw the implementation of the community projects and events funding program. And we just had a few comments and improvements that we thought we could make as a committee to those guidelines. So over the course of last week, in consultation with the General Manager, Branch Manager and Manager for Community Development, responsible for community funding, we sought the feedback from the committees, and at a very high level, these were just small improvements that we were making. You'll note that the two documents have actually become one, and that was streamlining the process so that this is one coherent document which outlines the guidelines for our funding. I guess the biggest thing that I wish to highlight was the acknowledgement of council when it comes to the awarding of monies and funds to successful applicants, and the back end of that document, as you've all as circulated, you can see covers quite comprehensively what council would expect at certain times for those community groups getting money. And I think that it's a really positive outcome for the community. It was one that the Mayor raised, and it's not just about acknowledging council and giving the kudos for the funds raised there, but it's also an opportunity for these community groups to have greater exposure for their events and their projects. And I guess that's what we want to see. These funding guidelines very much bringing this into line with our community development strategy. And I can't wait to celebrate some of these really positive stories moving forward, some of the amazing projects that will come to us.
Councillor Fetner, you will move that the revised community projects funding and community events funding guideline be endorsed by council. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Kunzelman. Thank you. Opening up for further discussion, I just note that I think this was emailed out to all the councillors. Was it Monday or Tuesday? Tuesday. And I note that, and I think Councillor Cosmo suggested that all the areas that were discussed in the meeting, as well as later on with the General Manager, there was a meeting, all those suggestions are highlighted in here. And in particular, I think Councillor Cosmo, you made sure that the part that says elected officials are not part of the assessment panel and do not contribute to the assessment panel's decisions. Thank you for that contribution. And I think you will see that we've changed the funding a little bit to make sure that we can, as I spread the goodness along further more equitably around our community as well. So thank you very much. Councillor Fechner, bringing that forward.
Great result.
Any other discussion? Councillor Tully?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I think this is a pretty comprehensive report with the amendments. And I take it that what's shown in yellow are additions, and there's no actual deletions from...
No, they're the additions.
They're additions,
Can I
yes.
just clarify one thing? It was said to me during the week, and perhaps this is covered by other funding programs, that traffic control for events is not included, but I can't see that is excluded in this policy or in this statement. Yeah, traffic controllers for a particular event that we're
So
funding.
I'll probably defer to the relevant council officer, but certainly we're talking today about the community projects and events funding. Certainly council do fund for traffic control for like some civic events and larger events, and I'm just looking to see whether we need the relevant council officer to clarify whether traffic management is part of these, I guess, these community events.
Either this or some other funding.
Yeah, so I'm just, Mr Pole's going to come up so you can ask the
thank
question,
you.
Councillor Tully.
Yeah, that's the only query that I have.
Thank you. And it's a relevant one too.
Good morning. Ben Pole, General Manager, Community, Cultural and Economic Development. Traffic management is not excluded in this funding program, so it is a fundable item in this and other funding programs as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that, Councillor Tully. Thank you, Mr Pole. Any other discussion? I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous and carried. We now move on to item 15.4, the Economic and Industry Development Committee, and I'll hand over to the Chair for that.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll just move the recommendations of the committee. And I just wanted to highlight the $1.5 billion worth of pipeline investments that are happening in Ipswich, people. So it doesn't seem like the media have actually heard that, how awesome Ipswich is and how many people want to come and invest here and build businesses in our beautiful region. So I'm pretty proud of our economic development team for keeping a track and concierging so much in our beautiful city, and going to visit the schools and going on career panels recently. I know that we've got kids that are eager to get on and, you know, be employed in the jobs that will be created from these pipeline projects. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So you're moving that the council adopt the recommendations of the Economic Industry Development Committee on the 14th of July?
Yes.
Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Fechner. I'll open up for discussion. No? I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. It's unanimous and carried. Move on to item 15.5, the Environment Sustainability Committee. And that recommendation is that Council adopt the recommendations of the Environment Sustainability Committee report of the 14th of July. I'll hand over to I assume the committee chair, you'd like to move that?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'll move as you just stated.
And do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Fechner. Thank you. I'll hand over to yourself, Councillor Milligan, if you wish to speak to it.
Thank you, Mayor. There was 2 items of new business on the agenda. I'll move them as a batch. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. It's unanimous and carried. Move on to item 15.6, which is the Ipswich Central Redevelopment Committee report. Thank you, Councillor Fechner. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The report states that the Council adopt the recommendations of the Ipswich Central Redevelopment Committee of the 14th of July. I assume, Councillor Doyle, you'll be moving that?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I will move that.
And and seconder, Councillor Quinton. Thank you. Now, sorry, thank you, Councillor Doyle.
I would suggest that we move those in batch, items 1 through to 8, just noting items 5 to 8 are, 4 to 8 are 5 new leases, so 5 new businesses coming very, very soon within the Nicholas Street precinct. Just would like to briefly mention an event that occurred in our CBD on Saturday night. It wasn't a council-led event, it was a community-led event, Back to Ipswich lapping event. I think Councillor Jonik will be able to speak to exactly the numbers that it attracted into our CBD, but it was so exciting to see the nighttime economy alive and well, and gave us a glimpse into what we can look forward to with our new businesses opening up in and around the CBD, supported by events such as this.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Councillor Johnny?
Thank you, Chair. I don't know the number, but I can tell you the number of Tiranas that were there. So it was a great night. I had a lot of commentary back about how beautiful Ipswich is in the evenings, and that was coming from the locals, and so that was that was them getting surprised at how beautiful our city is at night time. So that was really great. And I had I met Brittany, a 12-year-old girl, schoolgirl from Hatton Vale, who had inherited her grandfather's XY, and seen the event on Facebook and told her parents that she wanted to come and see it, and so they drove her all the way in and they had a great time. So I think organically this is what the nighttime economy needs in Ipswich, and it's just a great privilege to be part of it, I think, and that your community getting behind it, it's what we're all about, isn't it?
There you go, Johnny. Yeah, Councillor Tully.
Oh, I might just add, and I think I might have mentioned this in the past, that when I first came to Ipswich in 1974, these events certainly weren't sanctioned and usually led to an upsurge in the number of people attending the Magistrates Court the following Monday.
I'm sure you're never part of that, Councillor Tully. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Milligan.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to also add to the commentary also already made, in that I did take a trip around. I didn't chuck a lap because I didn't want to be made fun of in my hybrid, but I zipped around the outer skirts, and it was actually amazing with the amount of on-flow, nighttime economy to other businesses not in the CBD. Up Pine Mountain Road, North Ipswich, the pizza places there had these beautiful cars parked on that wide parking area, angle parking, and line-up of people going into the gourmet pizza place there, all through Brassel, Hunter Street, the shopping centre. All of that as well was a buzz, to say the least. So it definitely proves that people want to come and visit our beautiful city and engage in that nighttime activity. And for the businesses, I think that's an incredible thing.
Thank you, Councillor Milligan. You could be a trendsetter with your hybrid. You could set up claim your own pizza shop and hang out there with the other hybrids. Councillor Doyle? Thank you. If there's no other discussion, I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous and carried. Thank you. I'll just wait for the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Fechner. Welcome back, councillors. You missed a long discussion on happy lapse. We're at item 16.1, which is the CEO Organisational Performance Report for June. And I'll move that the CEO's Organisational Performance Report for June 2022 be received and the contents noted. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Doyle. I guess in discussion, a few things that are really good to see in page 158. I guess the lost time injury frequency rate, again, it's 2.61, which is lower than the month of May. This is the longest. We've also been consistently decreasing that, so I thank you, CEO. And I note that the state's average is actually 12.79, so it goes to show the hard work by the executive and everyone on the ground, and making sure that everyone's safe and looking after each other. So I did have a question to ask about page 165, where there's a table, and that's on the flood recovery, the QRA grants that are coming through. We've had some money come through and others that have been requested. In that column with requested, just inquiring how they are going. And are we confident of getting that money, or is it a competitive bid, or we know we're getting the money or not?
Thank you, Mayor. If we could ask the relevant officer to come forward, that would be great to provide us with the latest information on our status.
Thank you.
Morning, Mayor and Councillors. Matthew Mulroney, Program Manager, Council Flood Recovery Program.
Thank you, Mr Mulroney. I know you've got a lot of work on with the working with the QRA at the moment, but in that table on page 165, there's a column there for requested monies. How is that going, and is it a competitive bid, or do we know we're definitely getting it? How does that work?
Most of those in there, Mayor, along the counter disaster and the emergency works, those sorts of things, they're not a competitive process, but as you can imagine, they're a very, very complicated process that is audited quite heavily. So we are taking a lot of time ourselves to make sure that the information is correct and is justifiable. Then QRA, Queensland Reconstruction Authority, have a very long process to, again, confirm that the works are eligible and have been done. So the general turnaround time from when we submit those claims is around about 60 days.
Okay.
Okay. But of those, I've got no real concerns. Few dollars here and there in that justification, but no real concerns over those. When it gets down to the likes of the waste cleanup and some of those other programs, they are competitive, but we're working very closely with QRA to make sure that we can get some money out of it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr Malwani. Are there any other discussions on Mr Malwani? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll move back to any discussion on the report. Yes,
Yeah.
Councillor Johnny?
Thank you, Chair. Just on page 169, next to the flood warning facility at Goodna, flood siren warning, it just had the expected completion date of the 19th of July 2022. So I'm just wondering if that could be updated.
The progress on that?
Yeah, because I know that. Otherwise, I'd be pretty excited.
Yes.
Thank you.
Certainly, we can update that. Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnny. Anything else? I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous and carried. We now move on to 16.2, which is the new Ipswich planning scheme draft, stage 1 planning scheme preparation. That is put before us. This report is intended to facilitate Council's endorsement of the draft new Ipswich planning scheme of policies for the first state interest review by the state government in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and the planning regulations and the Minister's guideline and rules. So I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Tully. Thank you. May I ask the relevant council officer to the lectern, please?
Good morning, Brett Davey, Manager City Design.
Morning, Ms Davey. So my first question will be in regards to page 290, which has a list of attachments. So 3 through to 15 are all confidential. And obviously the planning scheme has a big impact on how council and what happens for our residents. Could you outline why that's confidential and when do they stop being confidential?
Of course. The planning scheme itself has been in draft for quite some time. The early iterations of it were presented to the community in 2018, 2019 for comment, and those have been considered. The process for preparation of a planning scheme is a long one, and there's some information in the attachments to, or the non-confidential attachments to explain that. But essentially at this point in time, we'll take a draft of the scheme to the state government for them to review. There is a chance that some of the policy setting will adjust in response to state government issues and state areas of state interest. Once that process is complete, we will go to formal public consultation, and we anticipate that will be early or the first half of next year, depending upon our timeframes. The other thing to note from that front is that we have begun preparation of a stakeholder and community engagement plan. We want to go beyond the minimum statutory requirements of the Planning Act. So the minimum statutory requirements are to notify the community for a set period of time. Once the state government give us the go-ahead, we take those into consideration and then we move forward with the program. We want to start earlier than that with some thematic information, but also to engage with the community and our stakeholders on what we've been doing, what sort of themes that they can expect to come out. And then when the policy is freed up from that state government process, we can publish that to the community and help them understand it.
Thank you, Mr David. Mr David, in attachment 1, which is not confidential, which is obviously the CEO notice, I noticed in the attachment there on, I'm looking at page 224, noting the step process, I assume we're at step 5 if this is approved today, is that correct? That's where we're up to in the process?
Yes.
Thank you. And with the community consultation, the themes I assume will be around the flooding, the bushfire, mining, biodiversity, and et cetera.
Yes, the consultation or the formal consultation will be on the entire scheme, which covers all of those themes. There will be some highlights of specific interest to our community. Flooding, I would suggest, is number one. Waste will be up there as well, but there will be a range of other issues that we've heard about and listened to over the last, the life of the current scheme, to be honest, that there are ongoing issues with the speed of growth and the rate of growth that we're experiencing, the size of lots, issues around clearing of vegetation. So there's a range of things that we will try and address with the community specifically as subject matter.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have further questions of Mr Davey? Yes, Councillor Tully?
Just one in relation to the community consultation, which will be in the next few months. What's the minimum period of time for that, and can that be extended, or can we adopt a longer community consultation time?
We can adopt a longer community consultation time if we choose to. I believe the minimum statutory is 40 business days. So if we choose to go longer, we can. There is some governance around that in terms of submissions, and that's something we want to deal with in our engagement strategy, because the statutory effect of submissions is applied during that process. So if there is a set time frame, the submissions need to be made in a certain format. If we get submissions before or after that time frame, they don't have the same weight. I would expect, though, that regardless of whether or not they're properly made or not properly made submissions, the council would expect the officers to consider those submissions in the preparation of the scheme.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Councillor Ireland.
No,
Mr Davey, I'm just wondering if consultation has proceeded with the agri-tourism operators.
Not to date. We've issued them with the paper and an invitation to make comment. By paper, the previous paper that we'd prepared to support the implementation plan of fee relief for some of those businesses. With that particular subject, we have paid attention to that in the drafting of the scheme, and some of the issues around the balance of enabling agribusiness as well as addressing some of the impacts that agribusiness may have on the community. I've talked to and had communication with some of the business operators, but we do have to address more fully their needs and concerns.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Milligan.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr Davey, just note in the details of the report there that is it planned for the public consultation to spread across 3 months?
I think March to May next year.
March to May, that's full 3 months. Because I am aware, Councillor Kunzman and I have, just from our division alone, received a lot of contact so far with regards to it. There's a lot of interest not only from individuals but from organisations within the community, including agri-tourism businesses. I observe and acknowledge in the public gallery today is the President of the Carolee Community Association, and I thank him for coming into this place today to see the processes that we're going through. There are residents and the Marburg District Residents Association also have shown very much interest. So with that period being 3 months, is resource going to be made available for what may be, as Councillor Tully pointed out, maybe quite some volume of interaction with regards to the community consultation?
Yes, thanks for the question, Councillor. We are preparing our strategy at the moment, and that doesn't just deal with what we'll do, but how we'll do it and what communities of interest and stakeholders we need to address. So I've got a list myself that I've started with different community organisations that I know will be interested. And there's always the issue of how you engage with those community organisations at the right time with the right amount of information. So we've got that in planning. I think we will plan our programming over the next year so that we have capacity to be able to engage in the right way. And of course, we'll workshop the engagement process and the plan for that with the councillors and the mayor to make sure that we hit the mark. When we talk about a 3-month window, it is, in terms of project planning, allowing for some uncertainty in that we will provide this document with your endorsement to the state government for them to undertake their processes. We don't have a set time frame of when that will come back out. We've made an estimate based upon experience of when we think that will come out, and that's in that March to April zone. The chances are that when it comes out as well, it could have some conditions on it that we need to change things. So there is a bit of shades of grey on the time frame that we will just have to work through. So we need to be a bit fluid in our programming for engagement. I would expect that we are engaging with some of those groups before we get to March as well.
Thank you. Councillor Johnny.
Thank you, Chair. So just flowing on from Councillor Milligan's question, really, but really in relation to these the interest groups and having a bit of a register for in its entirety or for us divisionally. I don't know whether that's in the pack, and if it is, or if you're already working on that, I apologise, Mr. Davey, but that would just be good to for us as a tool to make sure that we've captured everyone's interest, because I know there's a lot of talk definitely in Division 2 when it comes to infill suburbs, and we just want to make sure that everyone gets their voice, everyone gets their say, and we've done our jobs properly as well.
Yes, thank you. It's not in the current pack or in any of the attachments, but I do have a list running and we are working on a plan. So if you've got a wish list or a list of either issues that you want to address or groups, individuals, any stakeholders or community that you think need to be addressed with this package of work, then we can add it to our list and program it out.
Yeah. Mr. Davey, the 2017 South East Queensland Region Plan, which obviously our council is a signatory to and we must abide by the state government, has Ipswich taking 30% of the population growth. How does that work with our planning scheme as we're going through? We work with the state on what residents want, but also we also have an obligation to provide affordable housing and so on for people coming to South East Queensland. What's your take on that?
So for the work that we've done to date, firstly we must accommodate the other planning instruments that exist above the planning scheme, including shaping SEQ. Looking at the work we've done to date, there isn't an issue with us being able to accommodate the numbers in terms of both jobs and housing. And the challenge is that work comes at a cost. So new housing doesn't happen without some clearing. And so the balance there is that we need to make sure that the planning scheme also protects areas of substantial vegetation and endangered vegetation. Equally with our jobs growth, we need to make sure that whilst we're growing with population number, we are providing opportunities for people to be employed within Ipswich and not be a dormitory suburb where we have to commute elsewhere. The overall picture for the scheme, and part of the observation I make through history, is that people don't necessarily understand the numbers. They don't understand why the numbers exist in shaping SEQ, the regional plan. They don't understand why they build in an estate and they buy there and live there for 10 years, and then the estate next door might have been treed for that period of time, and all of a sudden it gets cleared. They don't understand and they don't appreciate the reasons why. So that's part of our engagement, is to help with the community understanding of that. But fundamentally, I don't believe we have an issue with numbers of growth or numbers for employment. I would just caution the community to be mindful of their surroundings, and that's the toughest thing about a planning scheme. Is it's not a exciting document to read other than if you're a practitioner, but it does have an effect at a range of levels. It dictates, to an extent, what you can do in your property, but also what your neighbours can do, and whether your neighbours can build a set of units or they can subdivide or they can't do anything, or whether down the road from you there's an industrial estate. So it's really important that people understand. And to assist with that understanding, the engagement, we are embarking on quite a bit of effort in making our planning scheme an electronic planning scheme, as opposed to having a series of PDFs on our website. We have a more interactive version, and we are doing a range of improvements with our mapping and the availability of land use information, so people can actually get access to information easily, because we know it's hard to get access to that information now.
And Mr Davey, Council some months ago approved for Council to purchase an interactive mapping tool so people could, rather than having to look up lot numbers and zoning and refer to other tables, so it was quite clear. When would the public be able to see that?
We're in the final phases of making it all work at the moment. I don't think we're in a position to announce a date, but it's not far away. I expect it will be this year.
Okay.
And that will be kind of the first phase. So we'll have a new system which presents planning information, allows you to look at development applications as well as some of the controls, not just as an interrogation tool, but it will have an opportunity to push information to the public as well. And then with the work we're doing with the planning scheme and that electronic planning scheme I mentioned, we are going to try and make those work in unison so that you can move, hopefully seamlessly, between a property level inquiry or an inquiry about a particular type of development through to what the policy says on that front.
Thank you, Mr Davey. Are there any other questions of Mr Davey? No, thank you very much for explaining that.
If I may,
Yes.
Mayor, just wanted to recognise the efforts of the broader organisation in preparing this document. It's a substantial piece of work and it requires input from disciplines across the organisation. It's the culmination of work that really started before 2017. So it's a very big milestone for us to achieve, and I thank everyone for their efforts, including the Mayor and Councillors and the time that you've spent with us getting us to this point. So thank you
for the fortnightly sessions. Do you mind outlining some of the areas of the organisation that are involved, just for the public?
Of course. So there's our strategic planning team, we're the core coordinating team for the work. We've worked with our development assessment teams in planning and regulatory services and our engineering environment teams in terms of the content to make sure it's fit for purpose. And there's been a substantial effort with infrastructure and environment in respect to our green space, but also engineering standards. Some of the content of the current scheme really hasn't been touched for 20 years. And so particularly the infrastructure and environment area have been pivotal in that work. And then we've had work with our community cultural economic development areas in terms of community services and economic development. So you could say, in a way, we've just about covered every single area, and we've even worked with corporate services because obviously there are implications on rates and finances that we need to consider in this whole program.
Thank you, Mr Davey.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Now, the matter has been moved and seconded, so I'll now open up for any discussion. Councillor Councillor Fichtner, yes.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. This is a very significant position of the council to be moving to a new planning scheme. Councils across Queensland have faced this every so often, and over the years I've been involved in looking at new planning schemes. What you mentioned about the SEQ regional plan is something which is often overlooked by local communities, that we are bound by the state government. It's the state government that approves our town plan. We make recommendations to the state, and what we're proposing now is the state interest check, so that they're checking all of the matters of state interest. But at the end of the day, even our final determination has to be approved by the state government. It's important for people to realise, for example, the density provisions of residential development are established by the state government, which we're bound to follow. I'd like to thank Mr Davey for acknowledging his staff and to himself as well over the past year, the opportunity for us to get together, all councillors, new and I won't say old, I'll say previous. I've always said when people are elected on election night, they're an expert town planner, and within a week they're an expert traffic engineer. I think most councillors probably realise it takes more than a week to come to grips with some of these very technical issues. And sitting with my fellow councillors during those fortnightly, well, it was more than just briefings, it was genuine involvement over a whole range of issues in the community. And I thought it was very valuable that we had that cross-fertilisation of ideas with the staff to be able to bring this forward to this position. Can I say that with a town plan, I believe it needs to be dynamic, adaptable and subject to annual review. Now that's a matter that we've discussed, that some councils are moving to the point that issues arise every year in relation to a range of matters, which I think mean that all councils probably, depending upon their rate of development and the issues that arise, should be prepared to amend their town plans on a regular basis. I see that as very important. Otherwise, you could be stuck. And that's what's happened here in the past, but I think we should regularise that position. One issue, and without obviously going into the details, because that's encapsulated in the information being provided to the state, is in relation to flooding. It's interesting that flooding has become a very topical issue this year, because the time between the 2011 flood and the 2022 flood was only 11 years. The submission that I made to the Floods Commission of Inquiry in 2011 was that between 1890, and of course the big flood was 1893, but there was flooding in 1890, the average flooding on the Brisbane River and the Bremer River was 19 years. Now, even though we're only talking about a small time frame over 2011 to 2022 of 11 years, I think it's indicative of what the community accepts, that flooding is going to become a more significant issue for communities such as Ipswich in the future. People often ask me and say publicly, why was development allowed adjacent to, in flooding areas, which is normally adjacent to river systems. It wasn't until, I think, 1876 when the rail line was connected from Ipswich to Brisbane. And rivers were the means of transport in a lot of cases, so communities were established. Goodna was established in 1856, 20 years before and there were people living there beforehand. I think it's important to recognise in most parts of Australia and probably around the world, communities were established adjacent to river systems. When I was first elected, we used a Q20 flood level. The council was using Q20. That was progressed to Q100, which was starting to be used by a lot of other councils in Queensland and around Australia, of approximately a 1 in 100 year event being the limit of development. So I'm quite excited about this. Hopefully the state interest process will be reasonably quick and giving the community the opportunity of being involved over a 2 to 3 month period. And it's important the community does get involved. Most people simply look at the effect of a new town plan, as was mentioned by Mr Davey, on their own property. And perhaps next door, if they thought there could be a service station there one day or something that they were concerned about. This is an opportunity for the community to look at the broader undeveloped areas of the city, whether or not vegetation should be protected and development should be more strictly controlled in those areas that could become residential or something that people may be of concern into the future. I might just conclude on the basis that part of this decision today is to look at our local government infrastructure plan, known as LGAQ, which refers to roads, open space and community facilities, and we're developing that through a different process at the same time. But that's very important that a part of our town plan has the LGAQ review, and it's an opportunity for our community to be involved in that as well. So I'm certainly quite excited. I would encourage people in the community to get involved when it goes on public display. And the other thing we talked about, and I think this was very important, that we'll follow our previous practice of notifying in writing every owner who's affected in a material way by the new planning scheme. Not just a change of name, but where use rights might change. And that proved very effective last time. And I think it's very important that we do that so the community understands that they will be notified if there is a change that material affects them and their property. So just in conclusion, congratulations to Mr Davey and all the staff there. And I thank my colleagues for the opportunity for being able to contribute amicably and in a professional way to get where we are today.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tully and Deputy Chairs to the Growth Infrastructure Waste Committee. Thank you. Councillor Fechner.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a few things. A lot of it's been covered by Mr Davey himself. We can see how proud he stands up there. There's an enormous amount of high quality work that went into this, and we all have access to that. I've done a significant amount of reading and am continuously amazed at the high quality work that the team has come to do in such a short period of time. Realistically speaking, we started off really not knowing where we were going to place our priorities as an elected group. But in the publicly available material here, we can stand proudly and say, we raised some of the most important issues to our community very early on in the development of this planning scheme. As Councillor Tully alluded to, we work together in a room every 2 weeks to put our thoughts and our community's thoughts into the development of the new planning scheme. And I think that that process has been a huge success. And I'm not just going to say it's been the lunches, Mr. Davey, but that certainly helped along the way. There have been highly engaging, sessions with elected representatives so as to manage the community's expectations and harness our vision as the elected representatives for how we want to see the planning scheme to be in the future. Special thanks, obviously, to Mr. Brett Davey, but also to Mr. Gareth Wilson, Mrs. Danielle Owens, and Mr. David Firmer, who have been there tutoring us, explaining in very great detail all of the complex issues that we were unpacking together in a way that we could understand them, which will in turn help us message out to the broader community some of those high-level changes in the planning scheme. Flood and fire risk, exhaustively discussed. Biodiversity and vegetation clearing controls, very, very important to our residents down in the eastern suburbs. The e-planning system that we all look forward to. No more PDFs and paper versions of planning schemes. I think that's something that the community will be very excited by, and will have more people engaged with what's going on in our city than ever before. And to link those services where the town plan, hopefully, and I do notice Mr. Davey used a few caveats, when he was outlining what might be the end product there, but for the town plan to link to current DAs, for people to understand what's happening in their communities, that information share happens in other LGAs. So we're really coming of age in that way, but I think making some ground. So I hope that everyone who's worked on this has been very proud of their achievements. We've also harnessed the passion projects, as Mr. Davey said, from across the organisation. Very important to lean on those technical experts from across the organisation. We have them, so why not use them? And this has been a wonderful example of the entire organisation working together. Mr. Davey said it was almost every single department had a part to play in this, and they did so with enthusiasm. How good is that? CEO, you must be very proud. So in closing, I cannot wait to share and to talk with my community about this new planning scheme. We as elected reps have a role to play in communicating that, engaging with our community, but that engagement started as soon as we were elected. We were getting inquiries from people who didn't understand the processes, who were confused as to what council's responsibilities are. And although it sounded like a cop-out, many of times, because we really didn't have the requisite knowledge to better inform our residents, where we were just falling back on saying, well, this is really a state government thing, and Councillor Tully hit the nail on the head. We can scream black and blue, and there's things that we're absolutely fighting for in these confidential attachments that were non-negotiables for us, but it's a wait-and-see process with the state government. And there will be a register kept of those within the state interest check to say the state government didn't agree with Ipswich City Council's position, and we will be communicating to the community exactly what those points of tension are, and it will help us all come together and better understand the planning scheme. I speak with a fierce optimism about this, and I hope I'm proven right, but the fact that we all sat around the table and unanimously agreed to go above and beyond when it comes to our obligations of consultation speaks volumes about how much we truly want to hear and engage with our community on this. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fechner. Any others? Thank you, Councillor Milligan.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll try and be concise and just simply state that I concur totally with my colleagues' comments so far, and look forward to also, as elected reps, assisting the organisation to take the consultation out to the community so that we ensure that the new iteration, the newer contemporary modern application serves our community instead of the other way around. And I have no doubt whatsoever that even though I still consider planning quite a dark art, I'm sure that Mr Davey and his team and the entire organisation will, for town planning, bring the sexy back.
I won't go there. Thank you, Councillor Milliken. Yes, Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to call out or speak to the character matters. It would be remiss of me to not speak about heritage matters in relation to the new planning scheme, and just would like to, reassure everyone that we are absolutely looking at the character overlays in place and health checking right across the city to see if there's areas that need to be afforded protection or greater protection, and I look forward to updating residents as we move through this to deliver some better outcomes for the character properties within our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Councillor Kunzelman.
Thank you, Mayor, and I endorse the comments of my fellow councillors. I particularly look forward to this new planning scheme and the consultation process as an educative activity, advising our residents what it is that councillors do and do not approve of, and why it is that the block next to me that's been vacant for years can actually be filled in with a service station. And the first thing that I know about it is that the trees are coming down. And I think that is the experience of residents of Ipswich, and I think that an education role would be very useful in dealing with that and helping people to understand what it is that we do, who approves what, how the state government is involved, and how residents can get the best possible information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kunzelman. As Mr Davies said, this has been working on this new scheme since I think 2017. The current planning scheme was prepared under the Integrated Planning Act and took effect in actually 2006. And back then, the planning scheme had in our city we had a population of about 130,000 people, and we currently have 241,000 people. So as soon as we were elected, as Councillor Fichtner said, we took a strategic approach. We've deliberately engaged thought leaders, had briefings. We've deliberately gone into the planning scheme in a great deal of detail in its structure, its implications, and be that conduit for our community to make sure that our community's views are carried forward. So, like Councillor Fichtner said, with a great deal of optimism, it's great for our community and us as a council to move forward on this, and we're very pleased to vote for this draft planning scheme to go to the state for that state interest review, which is the next step in the process. With that, if there's nothing more, I'll put recommendations A, B, C to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. It's unanimous and carried. Moving on to 16.3, which is the expression of interest for iVolve, ERP Stage 3 procurement process. I will move this. Is there a seconder for this, Councillor Doyle? May I ask the relevant council officer to come to the lectern, please? In regards to the technical side of the ERP, probably not so much the procurement side. So I'll say probably the CIO.
Good morning, Sylvia Swalling, Chief Information Officer.
Good morning, Ms Swalling. Thank you very much for this. Obviously, it's the ERP system is one that we're watching very closely and anticipating. Just for clarification, what parts of the ERP will be going out to market as part of this EOI? Which part will be, I guess, staying with Oracle? What are we going out to market with?
So the overall functional scope for the EOI includes the finance and procurement function, asset management, human resources, portfolio project management, property and rating, customer request management, payroll and timesheets, enterprise risk, occupational health and safety, and data warehousing and reporting. So that's the high-level scope of the functions.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions of the CIO? No, thank you very much, CIO. Are there any other questions or discussion? No, I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous and carried. I'd like to move for a 30-minute adjournment, if that's okay. So it's 10:22, so we'd come back at 10:52. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. It's unanimous and carried. See you back at 10:52. Thank you. Welcome back from the adjournment. It's 10:52. We have everyone in attendance except for the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Johnnick. We're now on to item 16.3, my apologies, on to 16.4, which is the motions for the 2022 Local Government Association of Queensland Conference. And we've got, I think, 3 motions there that we're looking at doing. So I will move 16.4, A through to C. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Tully. I'll move into discussion now. We have Resolution 1, which is the Commonwealth Legal Financial Assistance Scheme Native Title Withdrawal Funding. So where we'll be wanting to ensure that the motion is that the LGAQ lobby the federal government to reconsider the proposed cutting of the Commonwealth Attorney General's Financial Assistance Scheme under the Native Title Act of 1993. The second motion is seeking support from Logan City Council and other councils for the South East Queensland Climate Resilience Alliance. And the third one is on prohibited development and modern planning schemes. I understand, Councillor Tully, you'd like to speak to this?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. This is an important part each year of the opportunity of all 77 councils in Queensland to put motions to the annual conference of the Local Government Association of wider impact than just their own council. These 3 motions, and I'll just very briefly touch on the first 2, which is the funding from the Commonwealth Attorney General's Department. That's important because that may not be to oppose, it may be to support a particular application, but that funding's been there for some time, and in my view it's important that that continues, and I'd hope that we'd get the support of delegates. The other one, of course, is in relation to the Queensland Climate Resilient Councils program. We're seeking an extension for that for 3 years. I believe that that will get significant support. The other is, and this has come up in our discussions about the seeking to reinstate prohibited development in modern planning schemes. Prohibited development was a key part of councils' planning schemes for many years, and the state government moved away from that. And one of the reasons was that most councils had 2 or 3 pages of perhaps hundreds of prohibited developments, and that actually, the best example I can give again is River 949, which was originally QFM. That was one of the best locations in Ipswich between their transmitter near Lowood and their radio links back into Brisbane. And they had to go through a rezoning, which meant it took about 12 months for the minister to approve that because it was a broadcasting station was prohibited under our planning scheme at the time. And there were many examples of things which weren't offensive, weren't inappropriate, which were prohibited uses. And I can see at the time why the government moved away from that. But what it means is that councils can't make or determine prohibited uses. For example, there is nothing to stop an applicant from putting in an application for a piggery in a residential area or a nuclear plant or something that could be totally offensive. And you might say they'd never do that. That's probably right. But we have seen a little bit of a trend even here to put in funeral parlours in the middle of residential areas next door to homes and things like that. And councillors will recall our discussion, and I know Councillor Doyle is supportive of this concept, that there should be a small number of prohibited uses, ones that the councils and the government can identify to give the certainty to the community that certain uses would be prohibited. And that's why I'm strongly in support of that. I think it should happen, and this motion is going forward. Can I say, just to illuminate the process from now, these all councils have to have their submissions in, I think, in the next few days, possibly by the end of the month. And they go to a committee of which I'm on the LGAQ, along with Councillor Matic from Brisbane City Council, Councillor Jenny Hill, and one other. And they're reviewed to ensure that each motion coming up either complies, not necessarily with existing policy, but complies with the intent of motions, that they have to be broader than an issue just affecting one council, which could be telecommunication issues through the various providers. or if emotions can be amalgamated, very often it turns out that more than one council puts in a similar motion. So that we'll be reviewing those in the next few weeks. And I can't see any reason that ours wouldn't be accepted through that process. But then we have to face all of the other delegates on the floor of the council chamber. I'm quite impressed that we've got a diversity of issues that have come forward through councillors and our officers, and hopefully all three will be successful in October.
Thank you, Councillor Tully. Any other discussion? Thank you, Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to thank Councillor Tully for his work on, in particular, that last motion in relation to prohibited development. It's something we've been discussing for a while and certainly has come up in the context of the waste operators that a number of our residents are impacted by. So we will keep the discussions going and continue to investigate improved ways of protecting our residents.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Any other discussion? I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous with everyone in the room and carried. Thank you. Item 16.5, which is the resolution of outstanding rates, and that recommendation that Council resolve under the Local Government Act to delegate the power to the CEO to be authorised to negotiate and finalise the outstanding rate matter to do with any other acts necessary to implement Council's decision. We're about to discuss a legal matter. I'd like to move that in accordance with section 254J3E, legal advice obtained by the local government or legal proceedings involving the local government, including, for example, legal proceedings may be taken by or against the local government of the local government regulations, that we move into closed session. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Thank you, Councillor Fechner. We'll do a vote. Those in favour for the closed session, please raise your hand. Thank you. It's unanimous and carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. We've just come out of a closed session. It's 11:25 a.m. Thank you very much. We go back to it's item 16.5, and that recommendation is that council resolve to delegate power to the CEO as per the confidential attachment 1. I will move that. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Kunzelmann. Are there any other people, any other discussion points? No. I move that we go to a vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous and carried. Thank you. We now move on to item 16.6, which is the monthly financial performance report, and the recommendation that the report on council's finances be considered and noted. So I'll move that. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Would anyone like to ask any questions? Any discussion? Unless I know we've been through this very finely at the end of the financial year. If there's no discussion, I'll move this particular resolution. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. It's unanimous and carried. Now move on to item 6.7. If you remember from the early part of the meeting, it was item number 8 in the Governance and Transparency Committee. And it's the disposal of part of council freehold land located at 7006 Panorama Drive, Springfield. This is a report concerning the disposal of part land for road purposes located at 7006 Panorama Drive, Springfield. And also the being council freehold land held in trust by council for drainage and future road purposes. Part of the land for road purposes located at 1 Tilapia Way, Springfield, being freehold land also held in trust by council for use by local community park. May I ask for the relevant council officer to come to the lectern, please?
Good morning, Mayor and Councillors. Bianca Gaudry, Senior Property Officer.
Thank you. Ms Gaudry, do you mind just outlining, obviously the Governance and Transparency Committee was given one report and now this is an expanded one. Do you mind explaining, going into some detail?
Yep.
Thanks.
So it was identified after this report went to committee that a small parcel of land was left off the original report. Right. It has to do with the adjoining lot to the lot that was mentioned in the original report, where there is an extra 6 square metres of land that would truncate that corner of road that should have been included.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Yes, Councillor Tully?
Yeah, just to clarify, I'm just looking at that plan now of the road, the putting aside the truncation. Is that area of road, proposed road, is that what's the 1.755 hectares, or is it the square that's shown around it?
So that square...
Is that just to identify the position?
That's correct, yes.
So it's the road, which is road to become road reserve, is the 1.755 hectares.
Are you looking at page 308, Councillor Tully?
Yeah.
And so you're asking if it's all the land in the square, or you just looking at the bits of road?
I'm right with that. If it's just let me hold it up. I'll just hold up that page. Just that little segment here. Yeah, it's that segment there. Is it just that segment of proposed road, which is the 1.755 hectares? No?
No. It's the whole of the lot, I believe.
What?
That whole lot. 5001. So
where does 5001 finish? So it is... sorry, I really don't understand.
So you asking lot 5, there's the squares going over to this lot 5,000 and 5,001? Or the boundaries there?
Yeah, I'm just...
And I guess you're asking, are we just looking at the land for the road only, or more broader? I think, is that the question you're asking?
Yeah, it's really confusing to me. Can I just, maybe if I went up here to
explain. Thank you, Councillor Tully.
Sorry.
So is that just the blue line?
But this remains part of the park area. This is the park area? Yeah. This is the land proposed for road. That little bit there, well, what about this area, white area in here? That's still that lot. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, yeah, so we're talking about this area here. That's correct, yeah. Plus a little truncation, the 6 square metres or up from that one. Yeah, okay, all right.
And just because we were off screen, and thank you very much, Councillor Tully, Ms. Caudry, for off screen. Just want to make sure that we're clarifying that the part that's being with the disposal is just the part that's in the dotted blue line. Is that correct or not?
That's correct, yes. So the dotted blue line is the new road.
And that's the only part of the land that's being disposed of?
It's the 6 square metres, that's just the corner of the lot at the top of that
Yes.
section of road, yes.
I'm just referring to Councillor Tully. You happy with them? Yeah. Councillor Johnny? Councillor Johnny? No, I can see some questions going forward. You're comfortable with that?
Yeah, we were just thinking we need some lasers.
Lasers, yes. Thank you. Oh, no, thank you, Ms. Goodall. Appreciate you coming to the lecture.
No problem.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, you're the chair of the Governance and Transport. Would you like to move this particular motion, or are you happy for me to? Okay, I'll move that. Would you like to second it? Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to that? No? If there's no further discussion, I move that recommendations A through to C. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. It's unanimous and carried. Item 17, notices of motion. There are none. Question 18, questions on notice. I'll then go into closed meeting at 11:33 a.m. And before we, and now I can say happy birthday, Councillor Kate Kunzelman. And thank you for the wonderful
Happy
cake
birthday,
baking. Thank you,
Councillor
Councillor Fichtner, for your wonderful singing at morning tea. Happy birthday.